Okay, so Steve and I are back to talk about the Fablemans, Steven Spielberg's barely fictionalized account of how he became a filmmaker. And it's one of the things that I just get the feeling that some of those scenes are just literally transcribed word for word from his life, which is fine, I guess. I'm sure Scorsese does the same thing at times. I don't know why. It's just another thing for me to pick on.
Oh, I'm gonna spend this whole chat picking on your fans. So
I have a feeling I might
feel
have
free.
I think I might have liked it slightly better than you. That's the first thing I want to say, that when I did watch it the second time, it got slightly better than the first time. And what I wrote down, let me find my notes here. I lost it now. So the second time I watched it, occasionally I'd notice a line that would have a double meaning that I might, I was so disappointed the first time.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can see the double meaning in that line, sort of reflecting where something's being said about filmmaking, and obviously it's really meant to reflect on his family life. There were a couple of those lines. They weren't hard to miss, really.
Yeah.
So it got a little better for me the second time, but just in general, and you can pick up from this. I just think Spielberg, when he turns serious, he can just get very kind of dreary, plodding. I think about how much humor, and I'm going back quite a ways, how much humor there is in Jaws and Close Encounters, um, and just how much this feeling there is in the Sugarland
Mhm.
Express. The only two things in the Fablemans I loved were Chloe East, the girlfriend. I thought she was great. I mentioned on
Uh-huh.
Facebook that I thought if Kale, well, I don't think Kale would like this film, but I think she would love Chloe East. And maybe, maybe you might even agree here. I thought David Lynch was amazing. Other than that, I just find it, again, just kind of dreary.
It's funny that as a not David Lynch fan, I loved his. I guess
Oh,
as a kid, thought he was great.
it was
Uh,
amazing. I'll do my impression for you at some point during this call.
okay, I'm ready. I'm ready for that. I should start by saying I wanted to like this movie. Spielberg is, I don't know, the last time I made one of those lists, I think it was number 3 on my all-time directors list. Uh, one thing about that used to be way farther down. I used to take every rating I'd ever given and average them out, and that meant things like Hook would bring Spielberg down because that movie sucked. But once I decided just to pick the top 5, well, he's got a lot of top 5s, and he went right up. I'm looking forward to the movie, and I'm anticipating that I will like it. The West Side Story, which came before, I'm not a fan of the play West Side Story. I was delighted by what he did with it. I was one of those, why didn't you make a musical before? I didn't think it was a great movie because I don't think West Side Story is great, but I enjoyed seeing him do a musical. And that I have that joy in many of his movies. Like you say, a lot of them, there's a lightness, a humor, or whatever. But I don't mind if he gets serious. It's not always a bad thing. And I think he's incapable of not doing a good job because he's so technically proficient. And this movie was like that too. But as you say, it seemed so often like we were just getting a transcript, like the Super 8 movies. Well, those were just, yes, Spielberg made super great movies when he was a kid. No, he made those movies that we saw. They just reshot them using better technology so it looked better on the screen. But he made those actual movies. That wasn't, how do I say? It's weird. Before we started, I had a little chat with my wife. She never even saw the movie, but she was chewing me out for my take, which I thought was interesting. I wanted to see some actual art between the reminiscence that he did and what we saw on the screen. And because I felt like you, that there was often just a transcription of what really happened, I kept asking, where's the art in this? In a movie like E.T. or Close Encounters, where among other things, he draws this picture of middle-class suburban life that's so realistic for people who grew up in that time. Now, he didn't ever see any space aliens when he was a kid, but he knew what it was like to get on your bike with your kids and ride around. And he knew about family life that comes out in Close Encounters, where it's a loving family that isn't perfect, but there's creation involved in all of that. In the Fablemans, and as far as I can tell from looking up, just watched an interview with Tony Kushner just before this today. That stuff happened. Yes, that's what happened to his mom and the boyfriend, and all that stuff was real. And that we're supposed to think what a great movie because Spielberg puts that real stuff on the screen. I just wanted some distance between them. And okay, his parents finally died. I guess they lived really long, but I don't know. Did his mom and dad really want to be the stars of this movie? I don't know that they did. And I don't know that there wasn't a way that he could do an autobiographical film that didn't come across like a transcript of his life, which is not this. It's like that's autobiography of noir.
That's an interesting point. By just transcribing, which we both seem to think is what he was doing, it's kind of lazy. He doesn't have to shape the material. In terms of family life, there's not a moment in Fablemans that comes close to the moment in Jaws where Roy Scheider's sitting across the table from the son and they make that funny face at each other. That is such a beautiful moment. Now I know his point in Fablemans is not to celebrate family life. I understand that, but just as a moment of authenticity. Now, he created that moment. I assume. I don't doubt it comes out of Benchley's book. That's a great moment. Or some of the family life stuff in I'll again point to Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Absolutely
it's beautiful.
There's a family in that movie that's fall apart.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
The happiness of Close Encounters is going off to see the aliens. It's not being at home with the kids who don't know what's wrong with dad. And so he's capable of depth while he's showing us something real. And
I can now see Close Encounters as kind of a not euphemism, but as a symbolic stand-in for what happened with his dad. The dad in Close Encounters becomes obsessed with something.
That's interesting. Obviously, we wouldn't have known that at the time.
You're right.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
One thing I'm going to be unfair, I think, because I feel like on the one hand, he was laying on the Jewish stereotypes thick. I think anytime you throw Judd Hirsch in there, God love him, but I think they say, go get Judd Hirsch. We have this really stereotypical.
Couldn't stand Judge Hirsch.
No. So there's that. And I'm thinking, well, okay, Spielberg more of a reason to do that than I do. Let him, I don't mind, but there was that presentation. Thrown into that was Michelle Williams. I love Michelle Williams. And I'm positive she's going to get an Oscar nomination for this movie. But I found her completely unbelievable. She has been Marilyn Monroe and pulled it off. She's been many different things. She is a fine actress. She could do anything, but I'm not sure she can play a stereotypical Jewish mother stuck in the middle of a movie with a stereotypical Jewish father and a stereotypical Jewish uncle, and et cetera, et cetera. I thought she stuck out like a sore thumb, which is probably why she'll get an Oscar nomination.
One of my notes, Stephen, I said might be the first film where I haven't cared for Michelle Williams. I don't seem cloying or, I don't want, it's such a cliche to say Oscar bait. I didn't know if she was gunning for an Academy Award, but she just did not. I didn't like her that much. And I found Paul, is it Dano?
Dano?
No, Paul Dano, I didn't buy him at all. To me, and this is not fair, he is old enough to play the father, but I guess to me he's still the crazy teenage evangelist of There Will Be Blood. I think he's great in that. And then to watch him being this kind of reserved father, he didn't seem like a father to me. I don't know.
No, I wanted to it's like when I watched the Terrence Malick movie. I think look, I just don't like these. Doesn't mean he can't make good movies. Paul Dano, I'm not a fan, but I don't know that I can put my finger on it. So I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and put it on me instead of on him.
Yeah.
Uh,
I thought Seth Rogen was good.
Yes, I did think Seth Rogen was good.
Kept it in
And the
check.
Spielberg kid, whoever that.
Actually, I thought the teenage Spielberg kids were good.
Yes, and we'll know his name. If we did this again in 10 years, we'll probably remember his name. He was good.
And he did.
But yes, I thought he was probably the best thing.
Did he not strike you as Spielberg? Like I could actually see Spielberg.
Yes, he was believable. You know, there's maybe that's something I should say, because it's not that Spielberg replicated a Super 8 movie he made. It's not that he replicated the conversation he had with John Ford. It's that actor gave me a sense of what Spielberg was like when he was a teenager.
Yeah.
And so that made it autobiographical, but the performance took it to another step. That wasn't just a translation of what he was saying the exact same things that Spielberg said, but the actor made it all believable, and I bought into it. And I thought he was, I don't know if it was the best thing in the movie, but yeah, he probably was the best thing in the movie for me.
He was good. I should say, I want to compare it to a couple other films, but I should say, to be totally honest, I don't think I went into the film with an open mind. On the message board, there's a Spielberg claque where no matter what he does, later films, and and some of these people will put down Jaws. I think that definitely had me. I don't like to do this, but not wanting to like it going in.
I have a friend on Facebook, good friend, and on top of movies. But when we went and saw Jaws in IMAX, a while back when they re-released it for that purpose only, and so I said on Facebook, we just saw Jaws in IMAX, and this friend said, "Why?" That was all he said, and I said, "Because it's Jaws. It's a great movie, and I never saw it in IMAX. What do you mean, why?" And I think he gave me a thumbs up for that response. But
okay,
Jaws is a great movie.
Oh, I'll defend Jaws to the ends of the earth. I compare it to two other films. I don't know if you'll agree with either one of them, but for a parents breaking up film, autobiographical, I think The Squid and the Whale is much, much better. I find it harrowing in a way that this film did not reach me. I find just some of the weirdness to that appeals to me. The weirdness of the kids and how they reacted to that. And then in terms of a to use another cliche, a portrait of the young filmmaker film, I think in its own weird way, Brian De Palma's Dressed to Kill with Keith Gordon playing the whiz kid, who puts all that stuff together to figure out who's killed his mom. Or even, it's not a kid, but it's an older, but John Travolta in Blowout. I think those two attempts.
Yes, that made that connection.
Yeah, to try and get at.
Did you ever see Home Movies, which was De Palma working with the?
No, I know about it, and I never did get to see it.
My memory is nice experiment, but it's exactly what you're describing in terms of let's make a movie and see what happens. Yeah, you're right. Dressed to Kill, I think that's a good combo, and Blowout, same way. But they were talking about Brian De Palma, and we're not supposed to like him, are we?
And I'm going to mention one other film here, and I know I'm going down on a limb here because this is a current film that it's not even that people won't like it. Nobody will go see it because of the director. It's the new Sam Mendes film, Empire of Light. Sam Mendes, of course, having given the world the much despised American Beauty. So I went to see it because I kind of like the trailer. And, it's got lots of problems. It's not a great film by any means. But
is that Olivia Colman in that one?
Olivia Colman, the lead actor, know him. He was quite good. It's heavily got a film angle. It's not autobiographical of a young filmmaker, but it's like Fablemans. It's obviously meant, and like Scorsese at least thinks he's written. The death of quote unquote death of cinema is very much on the minds of certain filmmakers, and Empire of Light addresses that. Both scenes have an almost identical scene In Fablemans, it's Paul Dano explaining to the son. In Empire of Light, it's Toby Jones explaining, he's the projectionist, explaining to the lead guy in the film who wants to be a projectionist how film works, the whole 24 frames per second. It has two scenes that are almost identical. Ultimately, I found Empire of Light more moving, especially this scene towards the end. I don't know if I don't know if I should say anything, whether you have
I expect to see it.
Okay, I'm going to
I'm
hold
so
up.
behind. I didn't know Sam Mendes was hated.
Well,
Oh,
American,
I'm really
American
behind.
Beauty, he's hated for having directed American Beauty. I'll put it that way. Then I'm not going to be specific on the scene, but there's a scene with Olivia Colman that I thought should have ended the film that I found more moving than any of the film stuff in Fable. I really did. And we can discuss that later after you've seen the film. So there's three films that, for me, Fableman comes up short.
I'll double back to the first one, Squid and the Whale.
Yeah.
My memory is that I can't really evaluate that as well as it deserves because I identified with was it Jeff Daniels, and I thought that's me at my worst day. You know,
he's a weird, humble guy. Yeah.
I'm watching this movie and I'm thinking, oh God, is this what people think of me? Oh, that's what I think of me. I couldn't get that kind of connection out of my head. And so when I think of that movie, that's what I think of. Oh, they made a movie about me and I suck. Oh.
No, I can see that. He is awful, although he has his moments, you know, where he becomes very human. I think Jeff Daniels is one of the great performances of the last 20 years in The Squid and the Whale. Laura Linney's great too. So let's talk about the performances, Fablemans. We've talked about some performers already. Oh, I know what I wanted to make. I liked the film better in the high school stuff. You know, when they moved to California. I got to say one thing though. Logan Hall, the character's name, I don't know the actor, the school's jock, the perfect guy, right? The volleyball player who turns out to have all these insecurities. He was an interesting character. I did think in the big, you know, after he's shown his film at prom, and they've got that extended scene in the hallway where he comes he tracks him down and he really says, why did you portray me that way? I thought it showed an unusual degree of self-awareness for a guy who's supposed to be a really dumb jock.
Yes.
The Spielberg character even says, no, I think you're the dumbest guy I've ever met in my life. Like he's very perceptive about himself, which is interesting, but there's a bit of a disconnect there, you know?
Yes.
And it was quite unexpected. So I just
like unexpected, but it was also kind of fun. It's a scene you remember.
It's a scene you remember, yeah. If you see the film, it's one of the scenes you will remember from it. And you know what that scene actually reminded me of all things? I don't know if you can recall this scene from memory. Albert Brooks in broadcast news, they have a prologue, which I assume you've seen.
Yes.
Maybe you haven't seen it since it came out, in which case it'll be impossible to remember. But before the film proper starts, they have a prologue, which each of the three main characters as a kid or a teenager. And Albert Brooks' scene is sort of high school graduation, where one of the kids comes out and just flattens him, just like in Fablemans. And Albert Brooks gets up and gives this big speech about how you'll never know what it's like to write a good sentence. And all of this. that kind of reminded me of the scene in the Fablemans. So I like that stuff. And then we got to talk about the David Lynch scene, even at the risk of spoiling it for anybody. I'm so happy I don't read reviews ahead of time. When I see it, I might take a real quick glance at them to see, you know, that somebody, I used to do that with David Edelstein, who doesn't seem to write anymore, just to see whether they liked it or not. But I'm so glad I didn't know that David Lynch was in the film. I didn't know anything about that scene. So the scene comes up, and you know, by now I'm certainly made up my mind that I don't like this film. And then suddenly he gets this letter from CBS Studios, goes, okay, Coven Heroes, that's kind of interesting. You got to go meet the guy across the hall. And I liked it from the moment he starts looking around. He sees all the John Ford posters, because I assumed my first thought was probably Orson Welles. Okay, I didn't know who the filmmaker was. So it's John Ford. And then Lynch's entrance is perfect. He comes in, he just brushes right by the teenage Spielberg. He's got the lipstick smeared all over him, which is actually probably kind of creepy if you think about what he's probably been up to, which is, you know, to get back to Harvey Weinstein. It's got overtones of Harvey Weinstein. Anyway, he goes in the room, goes in his office, disappears. And then the bit with his secretary. And Lynch, he starts talking. First of all, he takes forever to roll that cigar.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm waiting to hear this guy. Still don't know who it is or who's playing him. No, sorry, I know it's John Ford now, but I don't know who the actor is. And he starts talking, and it took me a minute to realize who it was, or at least 30 seconds. And I'm thinking, I know that voice. Who is that? And of course, my mind's running through actors, right? And finally, I clue in. Oh, God, that's David Lynch. And he's just so perfect. And I went out of the movie saying to people, the first couple of people I talked to about it, I said, he must have studied, or at least screened, the Peter Bogdanovich documentary from 71. I think it's called John Talk, so he could get John Ford right. Well, I was watching one of those TCM bumper things after I saw the film, and it had an excerpt or two from that. And Lynch doesn't talk like John Ford at all. He's David Lynch through and through. And it's so good. And I've been, as I mentioned on Facebook, I'm in the car. I just break out into David Lynch. It's John Ford now. Where's the horizon? Where's the horizon? That's right. If the horizon's at the top, it's interesting. Where's the horizon? Go to the next picture. If the horizon's at the bottom, that's interesting too. If the horizon's in the middle, it's boring as shit. Now get the fuck out of my office. It's just so he obviously had the time of his life playing that.
Yeah.
And there's so much joy and humor in that scene as contrasted with the rest of it. I'm glad he decided to end it and, you know, send me out of the theater happy on that. Then it's got the little joke at the end with the camera tilting out. Great scene, amazing scene.
It is. And it's funny when you got a 2.5-hour movie and the best scene is 2 minutes long at the end.
I tell people, you know, go see that. I tell them it's worth seeing for the last 5 minutes. And then if they want me to tell them about it, I just say, okay, but you got to make sure you have no intention of seeing this, right? Because if you have even the slightest intention of seeing it, I don't want to ruin it for you. It's like when I tell people, go see the 11-hour French film, Out One, just so you can see the last shot.
You know, I haven't seen that yet, but I always say, I bet you Phil's seen this one.
I have, and you know, I was perplexed by most of the whole thing.
Is that Jacques Rivette? Is that who that
Jacques
Rivette?
It's got an
and
ending.
that was like his shortest movie was 7 hours or something.
Well, he's got the one that always he's Julie and Celine go boating, right? I think that's about 3.5 hours long. But Out One's just got this completely non sequitur of a last shot that for some reason, I guess because I'd been drifting in and out for 11 hours. It's like it ended. That's brilliant. He decided to end it that way. So to me, that was a highlight of Fablemans. And I thought the girlfriend, the Jesus loving girlfriend, I thought she was great. She was always saying something unexpected for me. You know?
Yes.
I mean,
it was an unexpected character, but it didn't seem, I think at first I thought, oh, this isn't real, but no, she made it real.
Yeah. You know? And I thought the whole thing right at the beginning was just a ploy to, you know, get him into bed. But no, she did want to pray. She wanted him to pray. Then she wanted to get him into bed.
Yes.
and then she totally threw all that for a loop at the prom. She again did something totally unexpected, I thought. So that was great. And I don't know how autobiographical that was. Like everything in the film, I assume it was almost transcribed verbatim from a girlfriend he once had.
It's funny, the video I watched with Tony Kushner, and he talked about the process of them writing it. Because they go back to, I think, Munich, like 20 years ago.
Okay, Munich, because I thought
he
went back to Lincoln.
And Spielberg would sit around and talk about his stuff from his childhood. And Kushner said at the time, we got to make a movie about all this stuff, and ha ha ha. And then once in a while they'd remind each other they really weren't going to make this movie. But when they were doing West Side Story, and there was a time there between maybe the film was in the can, but the pandemic starts and it's not coming out. So they basically went back to this idea and they wrote the script. I think Kushner said he wrote like a 80-page novel of Spielberg's life and then they made it into this movie. And then that interests me because that is, I say this movie needed distance. Well, it should have come from this, half the movie is somebody else.
Yeah.
He's trying to present us Spielberg. Spielberg has the last word, I guess, but
Yeah.
I
Who's going to
would have
defer to
expected,
who there?
yeah, I would have expected more interference. I don't know.
You actually made me think right now, and a twist on your favorite quote ever. I can see Spielberg saying, he says, "This is it. I'm going to make a film that is a memoir of my life." And I'm going to come in and say, "Steven, you don't need to. You've already done that."
That's you go.
It's already scattered across other
Yeah.
films, like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. You don't need to make a literal memoir of your life.
But he's old. He's made a billion movies. He could do this. I'm glad that he made this movie because he clearly wanted to, and why shouldn't he? And he doesn't have to make every movie that I'm going to love it. But
absolutely,
I sat through it, and I didn't much care for it.
If the choice is him making this or going to make, a third or fourth Jurassic Park film, none of which, I saw the first one. I don't think I can't remember if I saw the second one, or Raiders of the Lost Ark. I saw the first one, never saw any of the others. That's a side of Spielberg I don't like at all. I'd rather he make this. And absolutely, when you're at his stage of life, why wouldn't he make it?
Yeah,
he's got complete freedom to make it. Whereas, Scorsese, maybe I'd like to see him go make this film instead of still trying in a way with The Irishman and definitely with The Departed, which goes back now, I guess, 20 years, but he's still kind of trying to make Scorsese films. Maybe he needs to stop and try something like this, but I don't know. So thanks, Stephen. It was great to talk about those two films. And with or without Scott, we will be back in another month or so with another edition of What They Said. Okay.
Thanks a lot, guys. Well, Guy. Thanks a lot, Guy.
Thanks a lot, guys. See you later.
Have a good time.
Bye-bye.
Look, lights on.